I would say be confident in your knowledge and providing your education, right? You are the licensed insurance professional. People are buying from you because you are their trusted advisor. And so be confident.
Hey, this is the Mayor, Heath Sheeran, and I am excited to be here because I've got the wonderful ladies of APP hanging out with me. We kicked Steven out of this, so we didn't like him anymore. Just kidding. But I've got our newest member of the team, Bobby Fernandez, hanging out, and I've got Therese Potter. We're going to be talking about how to handle rate with your team.
Oh, geez, that's a longer question than we have time for. But I just joined APP in January. I have a lot of operational experience, and I am so excited to get started working with other individuals like myself that just want to meet and exceed our potential.
And Therese, we've done a few of these, but go ahead.
Potter, the operations and training coordinator for APP, have a plethora of experience in insurance and training. And I speak Spanish, so I'm also bilingual because I lived in a foreign country for 12 years.
And a black belt.
That too. A couple.
So don't mess with Therese, especially when it comes to remarkets, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is how to handle with your team those remarkets and rate increases and things like that, because we're moving into a year, and y'all may have already seen this a little bit, where I believe that 2023 is going to be a little bit of a hard market, especially starting out the year. So your agency and your team, your CSRs, your account managers, they're going to hear a whole lot about rate increase. My rate went up. And so this blog, we're going to talk about how to handle that with your team. And immediately, what do y'all see when that happens, when that call happens? Bobby, you were talking about a minute ago off air. The team does what?
Panic. We go into panic mode. I don't want to make somebody mad at me. So I don't want them to be upset that their rate went up. So I'm automatically going to go out and reshop the account, right? Because I don't want to make anybody angry.
Oh, in so many ways, because you're reducing the premium and the commission for the agency. You may be rewriting a policy. For my experience, Nationwide and Nationwide, they're two different companies. They had grandfathered stuff in that old policy that you're missing, which can cause huge E&O issues if there's a claim and they don't have that and you didn't realize it wasn't there. So there's so many things. And I think as insurance agents, our brains go to remarket, rewrite, saving money. And I think that's where we have to stop and say, whoa, hold on, let's review what they have. Let's verify, let's check things, let's look for things.
Well, you bring up a good point that we'll talk about in the blog, is if you'll go read the blog, and then you can also check out Therese's blog on remarketing strategies. And so that comes out, I think, before this one. So it may already be out. Go check it out. However, March 6th, that one came out.
March 6th.
So that one's already come out. Go check that one out. But for this one, you brought up something that I like about the carriers. So I think one of the things with your team, and Bobby, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, of, there's so many things with carriers that you should train your staff on, or if your staff listening to this, you should educate yourself on. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that, Bobby, on different carrier stances and how that works as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think every carrier has their own unique things that they do. You get a lot of bells and whistles that a lot of times we don't even know when we're writing an account. How many times have you had to go in and change your policy screen or update your agency management system because you got some additional coverages that you didn't know that you were going to be blessed with, which is great. But in turn, when we just go straight to a remarket or a reshop, we can lose really great coverages that the insured didn't even realize that they had, and a lot of times agencies didn't realize they have. How bad would it be if you lost a retroactive date in the middle of a reshop because maybe a newer person forgot that or didn't realize what to look for a lot of times? So it can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, and back in my day, and I sound old, back in my day, when I just assumed every carrier loved a 20-year-old roof. Nowadays, a lot of these carriers are 10-year or sometimes even 5-year, 15 years. So maybe you wrote them and they had a 5-year-old roof, and now it's been 5 years. Mm-hmm. We got problems. Am I right, Therese?
Sometimes your carriers, it's the longevity that determines your claim issues. Mm-hmm. So your longevity can reduce the percentage of increase if there's an increase on your policy because of a claim for a homeowner's. the percentage of increase is actually less depending on how long you're with that carrier. So the longevity makes a difference, and people don't know that. We had a chart that we had to use that we could kind of tell, we could kind of guesstimate what the percentage of increase would be. Because when you have a claim, you have to have an increase, and people don't understand. You have a claim that's $20,000 for like a large roof. That money has to come from somewhere. And instead of you paying the $20,000, you have a small increase in your monthly bill. You have to be able to explain that. So that's one of the explanations of the rate increases. And how to explain it. I think sometimes clients just think, well, I've been paying all this insurance for all these years, and where's all that money going? So you have to think of those objections and know how to speak to them.
Yeah, and I think you also have to be willing to know, like, I was a carrier rep for 10 years, and one of the things people asked, and this was several years back, but it was, when all the cameras started coming out in cars, and when cars started getting fancier, as my kids say, that costs a lot more money now to be able to explain that to people, to be able to say, hey, these carriers had to take these increases because now when you back into somebody, it's no longer just a small fender bender. Now you've damaged the camera. Or if you've run into somebody, now you've damaged, LED lights instead of these, cheap bulbs or whatever it might be. Now you've damaged all kinds of stuff that costs more money because cars are fancy now.
The windshields.
Yes.
Windshields went from like barely any cost to, my goodness, it's got all this built-in technology.
One of the things, and Bobby, you may have done this, working with agencies too, is one of the things that we teach in one of our courses, Apex Retention, is I like to give, each CSR account manager a different carrier and have them go through and learn their discounts, learn their roof age things, learn their different things like that. Have you seen where that could be effective in agencies?
Yeah, that's a great point, Heath, because, a lot of times when you're sitting at an agency, you're getting all this carrier information just thrown at you. And so it's hard for me to be an expert at anything. I have to really define my role. So I think it's really great when you can maybe assign a carrier to each CSR or account manager and say, hey, provide any updates to the team at our team meetings about this carrier. And it makes it much more effective because now I don't feel so overwhelmed that I have to know and remember everything. I have another expert in the office I can lean on.
One of my favorite things about APP lately, and it's gotten even more fun, is we have like 47,000 chat rooms that we use in our Google chat. So I think within your agency, you could have a chat or a whatever in your teams or whatever for carriers and different things. And you might have somebody pop in and say, hey, I just found this information about Nationwide. Now they only want 10-year roofs. And that could be something, or you can add it to a Google Doc. Again, we love our Google Docs and shared files. And I think that's huge. And I know, Therese, you love those chats and you love getting in those and getting involved. What do you think about that?
I don't know if I'd put it in the chat because then you'd have to scroll up into the chat as things get older. Having a document that says, the perks for the carriers, do they have pet injury protection? Do they have car key replacement? Do they have, accident forgiveness? So I think a list of all the perks that the carrier has, and then the discounts they offer, which are separate because you could have good grades, a good grade discount. You could have a driving course discount. So having the perks and having the discounts for each carrier would be fantastic as an asset to a team where they could just pull that document. And so a Google Docs would be an excellent place to put it if you use Google Docs. And then people could add to it and it would be real time. So anything added to it would be updated.
I think people will be surprised when they check in their agency too. You have some account managers that are very motivated and they may be keeping marketing spreadsheets on the aside that you're not even aware of, right? And
100%.
So sharing that information and keeping that communication line open is a great opportunity.
I used to do that. I would have those documents somewhere and had a binder that I'd always reach to grab and put it. So now we're so digital, it'd be great to have that digitally.
Yeah,
well, when everybody's
cool.
creating the wheel, nobody's really being effective.
100%. And I think, we've talked about educating and being, informed and in the know about the carriers, but I also think there's a lot, as we started off with, the emotions that go into it. Again, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or when that phone rings, I think there's a big part. We talk about it in sales, but I think people neglect it on retention on the remarket side of having some empathy and being able to build some rapport with those people. So it's not a personal thing. You're more like, understanding where they're coming from. And instead of, oh, well, it sucks, get over it. Everybody's taking rate. I think you can have a little empathy there.
Like the teenage driver, right?
Right. Yeah, agreed.
So when somebody comes in and they're like, "Oh my gosh," yeah, and to be honest, when mine increased, I think it was only $70 a month, and I was surprised because I was like, "Oh, that's not bad," because I know what some can be. But you also have to look into different details of that, which it'd be great to reach out to your own agent and ask the question, which vehicle are they rated on, just to kind of get the ins and outs, and look into getting an umbrella if you have a teenage driver, because that can be huge. If somebody has an umbrella with your agency, they're less likely to shop because they have more policies, and it's harder to shop for more policies. So when a client calls in, make sure you're educating them on these things. And you may think it's easier to remarket, but you're actually taking a harder road because you have to, and if you don't have a rater, you have to, quote it umpteen million times to get several rates to see what's the best. And we're not always shopping for price. We need to shop for best coverages. And that's another thing we miss out on. I think we shop price instead of shopping, and not even shopping, just discovering the correct coverages that they have on that current policy, or coverages that need to be added. So you can end up discovering coverage increases and upsells that you need rather than reshopping them. You can find a plethora of things that will help with not having to remarket, but upselling and educating.
I think that was a great point, Therese, about price, right? When we present a quote to an insured without their request based on a coverage increase or price, I have now triggered the insured's brain to go, price is what matters.
And every year, because they're like, oh, she reshot me last year and I saved money, so let me do it again this year and then again next year. So you're poorly training them to think that they can be reshopped every year.
Right. So, again, on how to handle this with the team, I think we have to educate not only on the carrier, not only on, building that rapport and talking them through things, but I think also in just training your team. And if you're on this team listening, not going straight into that mode. And Therese was telling about an agency she worked with in the past that's what they did immediately. They would go into reshop mode. And number one, if you're doing it right, to do a reshop takes a good 30, 45 minutes. And you got to touch it a million times. And then if you don't have a rater, which, my God, if you don't get a rater, but if you do, you're still going to take some time. You have to go in and bridge those. You're going to do all this other stuff. And time is money. As a former agency owner, I hated to see my team spending so much time on reshops, and then you don't even know how they feel about it. They may be okay with it. They may understand that 10% increase or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Take time during your leadership or during your team meetings to have that role play, have those uncomfortable conversations, because the more you have them with each other, the easier it's going to be to have them with a client later. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
I love that you brought up scripts, because I'm a big believer, and so are we at APP, in scripts. But I also think taking that step further to role play, because there's so many times I would listen to even my own team, and they would be doing these scripts, and it would be just so robotic, and you would sound like you're reading a script. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that your rate went up. That is terrible. Instead of, practicing that with each other and being able to go through that and having someone that'll kind of push back a little bit and be able to handle those tough situations.
Yeah, and keep a list of what impacts those rates. Things like weather, increase in car crashes, distracted driving, natural disasters, and then client activity can cause those increases. Things like changes, adding youthful drivers, claims, tickets, and accidents. And then make sure you're reviewing the customer's information. Make sure they have the correct vehicles and the correct drivers. And right now, with the pandemic, a lot of people have gone from driving to and from work every day to working from home. So that makes a big difference. And any kind of updates to home, the electrical, plumbing, heating, and roof can, change things. So there's many, many things that you can keep a list next to you that, check mark. And APP has checklists too that we customize for different things for agencies. So check that out on our website, agencyperformancepartners.com. We've got tons of different things that can help agencies work through these.
You bring up checklist. If you haven't, gotten into our APP, Apex Retention Program, or any of our other programs, develop your own checklist or your own call sheet, so to speak, that you can go through and have your own agency standards built in there. And I'm a big fan of having agency standards. And I'm not sure, Bobby, you come from a background with big agency. Did y'all have agency standards typed out, written out? Everybody kind of knew?
You'd be surprised that even with some of the larger agencies, they don't necessarily practice good habits in that way. And they really need those things too. The agencies that I see doing that are much more effective. Their people are happier because they know what to do. They're not constantly wandering around wondering, who do I ask this question to because I don't have the information, or worse, giving an insured wrong information.
I guess a big agency standard would be we always write minimum limits, right?
We always add rental car reimbursement because I can't tell you how many agencies have had to pay out of pocket to write a check because we didn't add rental car reimbursement, even after the insured said they didn't want it. So document.
Right. But that's some of the agency standards that you might look into to say, do you want to, every client has 100, 300, 50, 100, whatever that might be. On the home, certain deductibles. What are some other things, Teresa, you've seen in that?
Don't do state minimum limits. The limits you just 30, 60, 25 in North Carolina, and that's not enough.
No.
25,000 of property damage is not enough. You hit a new car, there's no way that 25,000 is enough. So, make those standards higher. It's always easier to quote policies higher and then go down. But if you start at 30, 60, 25 or state minimum limits in your state and you try to go up, it's not going to work. In that case, people are looking at price. So throw a high price, 100, 300, 100, throw that out there and then have them come down from there. But different standards of, quoting it with all the bells and whistles, all the details, everything they need, and then taking it off as you have the discussion with the client and making sure they need it. A lot of people nowadays with the rental cars, like Bobby mentioned, they're getting the $30 a day, which is not enough, especially if they drive a Suburban. A family, most of them have the minivans, and that car it won't be enough, and they'll have to pay extra.
Yeah, I think one other thing to really check into, and this is kind of from an agency operations standpoint, is that a lot of agency management systems offer pre-filled accord applications. So it leaves the thinking to the system instead of your CSR or your account manager too. So you can put in your minimum limits in your pre-filled accord application, and they just pick that app on your way to make sure that you're not missing things.
I think there's raters that do that too. That when you're quoting, it'll quote.
Yeah.
And you can make an agency standard and put it higher. So everybody, when they're quoting it matches, and then they have to take it off from there.
And as we're talking again with the team about how to handle rate, and we're talking about standards in your agency, if you do have to go to a reshop, I'm a big believer, and I want to hear your thoughts. I know APP has some thoughts on this too. I think you should always provide some sort of options, not just to come out there and say, a reshop, here's your rate. I think you should give them options. Say, hey, here's what you had before. Here's this, and then here's a third option. And maybe you get cute in your agency and you call it gold, silver, platinum package, or maybe you option 1, 2, 3, or maybe it's the whatever your agency colors are, whatever. But I do believe in options. Have y'all seen that in agencies you worked with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's always a tiered option, right? This is our absolute best, coverage, and it's probably the most expensive option, but there's reasons why, right? So it's a complete sales strategy. Most of the time, your client is going to pick the middle option, right? But they're not going to pick the lowest option because, I don't want that thing, right? I'm not going to go out and buy I'm not going to go out and buy a Louis Vuitton purse out of the back of a van. If I'll go buy it at a shop, or maybe I'm not going to go directly to Louis Vuitton, right? So you have those options.
And if you do remarket, don't go so far away from their current price, because it may not be coming out of your pocket, but it's coming out of the agency pocket, and the agency still does pay you for bonuses, commissions, whatever they pay you. So if the policy is $500 for 6 months and you reduce it down to $300, that's $200 for a 6-month premium. And if you add a bunch of those that you do together, it can be huge. So, give them a close. So if it's 500, get it down to 480 or 4, don't go too far below what the current policy is because you're reducing the premium for your agency.
Oh, I think you set me up on that one. You triggered me. I'm going to try not to get too triggered here, but I think you're right though, because I think when the rates are going up in a hard market, people get freaked out about it, but that's more money in our back pocket. And I think, again, going back to what you just said, if you can give those options, maybe you give an option if it is 500 to use your example, maybe you give an option for 520 with better coverages. You still give that, 480, and then maybe you give a little bit other one. But again, knowing they're probably going to pick that middle or top option, feel, hey, I had to reshop this one. However, I was able to add and only be $20 more, and you've got way better coverages. I think that's going to be an option there if you can give those options. But again, going back to say whether it affects you if you're commission only or not, that's how we pay your salary as agency owners is on those, policies written. So if you're knocking everybody out, and I've been in agencies like, oh man, we have saved so many people so much money, but yet they haven't grown in like 5 years. So you can really affect the bottom line by doing too much on the reshops.
Right. So initially what you should do is take the current policy they have, look at the perks the carrier has, look at the discounts, add discounts if you can possibly add by asking all the questions, see if there's stuff that needs to be upsold, like increasing their rental, and then giving them that price, so you're reducing it with the discounts, you're increasing it with the upsells. You should be able to come somewhere similar, maybe even less than what the premium already is, depending on how many discounts you find. And it may be good enough to resell them the current policy they already have. We just need to work on walking through that.
Oh, I was going to say, and let's be honest, most of the time in the market that we're in right now, we're probably not going to get our insurance premium under what they were currently paying, right? So we have to get creative. We have to look at those discounts. We have to suggest, we don't know their situation. So put it out there and say, hey, would you consider a deductible increase? Let's talk about that. Let's see. We don't want to make assumptions about how our client is feeling. We need to talk to them and ask them. They bought from us because they like us and they trust us. So have those conversations.
I had an aha moment when I was requoting somebody. I was like, wow, this is really expensive and I don't know how I'm going to talk to them about it. And then I went, wait a minute. It's expensive to me. It might not be expensive to them. I don't know what their situation is. So as an agent, I self-reflected and I was like, wait a minute, I am choosing for them. And I'd been doing that for years. And it was like, I can't do that. So I just need to go in with that price, assuming that they can afford it and not talking myself out of the price, saying it's too expensive for me because it may be for me, but it's not for them.
Yeah, I call that, projecting your own feelings onto them, because just because you can't, and again, totally different topic, but, in the sales program that we talk about, people say, oh, people can't do paid in full. Well, you're projecting your own feelings. Maybe you can't, but maybe they love to load up their credit card and pay it off. They get all those points.
Because they get all their airline miles and they get to take a trip.
I want to get into one last little subject here that if you get a call, Bobby, and you've got someone, let's say it's monoline home with a rate increase, how could you work your team through that? What's the first thing you would look to do in that situation with your team?
I'm going to round out that account immediately.
Right?
Immediately. Why is the account monoline?
Right.
If my client loves me, trusts me, wants my advice, give me all of your business, right?
And I gave you the easy one with the home because they'll probably have an auto. But if it's the other way around, they have an auto. I mean, you could still upsell. You still
live somewhere and you have a renter's policy or you need something.
Yeah, I think it's funny when I go into agencies for the assessment, I ask them how much monoline. Oh, we don't have that much monoline. But then we run the reports, it's like 35% of their business is monoline. And I'm like, guys, there's a huge opportunity here, because then you could say, if we get your home and your auto together, there's like 30% discount sometimes, or 20% discount, or 12, or whatever that number is. And you're like, what, really?
Well, and sometimes those are the agencies that are paying for all these out leads that they pay for to come in. And those leads go to 10 different agencies. And if you don't call them immediately, they don't work, and you're paying for those when you have all of those warm leads sitting right in your book.
Right. Or you've got that mortgage broker. You've got a lender that sends you 1 million policies a year to look at, but you haven't asked them about their auto. And then when it comes up with a rate increase, you're like, wait a minute. if we get your auto and bundle that, you're going to see not only savings on the home, but also on the auto. And we might be able to save you more money than Geico or whatever it might be.
I mean, if I
That's what
have a
it costs right
monoline auto, a lot of times just the bundling discount pays for a renter's policy, even if I'm not a homeowner, or maybe I'm a college student away at school, right? And I still have that liability exposure. I need that coverage. And a lot of times it pays for itself. And then a lot of times, you're bundling an auto and a home, it pays for the umbrella by the discounts. So
Right.
consider those.
Therese, if you give one piece of advice to somebody talking to their team about how to handle rate, what would that be?
Probably not assuming what the customer can afford. Don't assume that you know what the customer's reaction will be or what they can afford. Present it to them like it's already sold.
Yeah, I would say be confident in your knowledge and providing your education, right? You are the licensed insurance professional. People are buying from you because you are their trusted advisor. And so be confident in that and use your Spidey skills and get it done.
I like that. Use your Spidey skills. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for hanging out with us and helping be a part of my blog that's coming out this week or already did. And check out Therese's as well and look for Bobby's content. And if you need a good consultant, if you need somebody to talk to about whether it's rate increase or your agency, look us up, hang out with us a little bit on our blogs, check out our website, agencyperformancepartners.com. We've been working really hard at updating that and making it really cool for you. So check that out. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next one.